Hey, hi there. Hope you are having a great time in understanding life sciences in your everyday life. In this particular part of the video, I would be discussing on a topic called as antigen antibody interaction. Now, when we talk about antigen antibody interaction, we know that when an antigen enters a host, the host defense mechanism recognizes the antigen and elicits a particular response against it. One of the response that has been toppled by the immune system is called as the production of antibody. Now, having said that, we need to keep in mind the first thing that the what is an antigen. An antigen is basically any component of organic nature which is recognizable by the immune system. This makes antigen to be either called as a self antigen or a non self antigen. A immune system generally produces a tolerance effect against the self antigen and develops resistance against the non self antigen. The development of non self attitude of the immune system against the non self antigen is one in which one is production of the antibody. An antibody binds with the antigen and neutralizes it. Now, the binding of antigen and antibody makes us go to on exploitation of this natural phenomena for our self-interest, basically in the field of diagnosis. Now, before we start talking on the uh, various assays that are available for the diagnosis that depends upon antigen and antibody interaction, let us first start to understand how we actually generate specific antibodies against the specific antigens, and the generation of such antibodies are then later used for the diagnosis purpose. Now, what we know through our studies in immunology, we know that whenever an antigen is injected or inserted into a host or organism, provided that that antigen has a high degree of foreignness, the animal responds towards it by the production of the antibodies. Now, when we say that, what type of antigens we are actually using to produce antibodies in any such clinical case? The antigens are basically the viruses, bacteria, fungi, or simple chemical laboratories that could elicit our immune system to produce the antibodies. Now, if we look at this diagram, what we see is how the antibodies are produced. Now, antibodies could be of two types, the polyclonal antibodies or monoclonal antibodies. In either of the cases, the process starts by injecting the antigen having multiple epitopic regions. Hope you remember that what is an epitope. Epitope is the specific region which is actually recognizable by the immune system over an antigen over which the choice for resistance or tolerance is being decided, right? So antigen which is having multiple epitopic region is always the choice or desire of the user. Now, when we take such an antigen and we insert into a host animal, remembering that it has a high degree of foreignness, now on doing that, the host organism will start producing the antibodies that could be either polyclonal in nature or monoclonal in nature. We'll look at it one by one. When we talk about a polyclonal antibody, what we actually mean is It is a mixture of antibodies which recognizes different epitopic regions over the same type of an antigen. I'll repeat it again. What is a polyclonal antibody? It is a bunch or a mixture of antibodies that actually recognizes more than one epitopic region over the same kind of an antigen. When B cells are stimulated, not a single B cell is being taken here in the production of monopolyclonal antibodies, but different types of B cells producing different types of antibodies which could recognize the different types of epitopic region over the same antigen is basically used for the production of the polyclonal antibodies. Now, when you want to produce a polyclonal antibody, you generally insert the antigen and then you collect the serum, and from that serum you can purify all the types of antibodies that has been generated against that particular antigen. Adjuvants are basically very much helpful in the production of polyclonal antibodies. Why? Because we know that adjuvants, what they generally do is they make a slow release of the antigen into the blood system, and since there is a slow release, it gives enough time for our enough time to our immune system to work upon it and develop a working strategy, and here in this case for the production of antibodies. So adjuvants are very good in giving immune system an enough amount of time for producing poly or different types of antibody. So that means what, understanding or recognizing the different epitopic regions over the same antigen. In current situation, apart from the adjuvants that we know, that is oil and alum, the use of alum and oil for the as an adjuvants, poly IC is being used, which is basically some structurally very similar to double stranded RNA, and this adjuvant is basically used because it can bind to the toll like receptors and elicits our immune system for the production of the antibodies. Right. Now polyclonal antibodies has its importance whenever you're talking about agglutination reaction or you're talking about the immune precipitation reaction, because polyclonal antibodies gives you a point of maximum cross linking. We will definitely talk about what we mean by cross linking in the later part of the video. Right. If we talk about the disadvantage of having polyclonal antibodies, the disadvantage is it may have a cross reactivity. Cross reactivity, when we say cross reactivity, it should never be misunderstood with cross linking. Cross reactivity means it may bind to a different kind of antigen as well, because the polyclonal antibodies may be actually recognizing different types of epitopes. Now the same type of epitope may be present on another type of antigen which is of not our interest, but since the polyclonal antibodies have understood that epitope, it may bind to an antigen which is not which is not of our interest, and may become a problem in developing a good result. So that is only one of the major setbacks of the polyclonal antibodies. Now, monoclonal antibody have the advantage over this. Why? Because monoclonal antibodies, they understand only a single type of an epitope over a particular kind of an antigen. So it cannot understand different types of epitope. It only understands a single type of epitope. Now, having said that, uh, how do we actually do that? We actually try to collect the B cells which has the capacity of producing the same type of a antibodies, and that is how the name has been came as mono, right? But then the how we are going to do that, how we are going to stimulate a B cell to produce only a single type of an antibody, meaning an antibody, how can we stimulate an B cell to produce antibodies that could understand only a single type of an epitope? Now, what was being done was to hybrid the cells. If you look at the previous slide where we were talking about how it is being done, and you see that for the production of monoclonal antibodies, there was a hybrid cell was being created. Now, when we talk about a hybrid cell, what are the two types of cells that are being hybridized to form a single type of a cell for the production of monoclonal antibodies? These two types of cells are the B cell, normal B cell, and a myeloma cell. Now, myeloma cell, we know it's a cancerous cell, and we are not going to look much into it, but only one character is of importance, and that is what the myeloma cells, since they are cancerous in nature, they have the capacity of unregulated proliferation. Right. Now, why we want to fuse a B cell with a myeloma cell? Because B cells are very short lived, they don't have a very big lifespan. So when we try to merge or hybrid a B cell with a myeloma cell, what we try to do is we increase the lifespan of a particular kind of a B cell. Now, in the very initial time, Sendai virus was being used for creating the hybrids, and in the recent time, polyethylene glycol PEG, we abbreviated it as PEG, is used for the fusion of a myeloma cell and a B cell. Now, what is basically done is when we inject a particular antigen against which we want to develop a monoclonal antibody, that antigen, after being insertion, the spleen of the organism is being isolated, and from it the B cells are being separated. If we take up a single B cell and we fuse it with the myeloma cell, definitely the hybrid cell will be producing only one type of the antibodies, right? So uh, but then whenever we are creating a hybrid cell, there is always a problem that you may get a homohybrids. What do you mean by that? You're using PEG. Now PEG won't be giving a specificity that it will only combine a B cell with a myeloma cell, but it may combine two B cell and it may combine two myeloma cell. Now if it combines two B cells, the B cells, since they are having short life, they will not be able to grow in the culture vessel, but myeloma cells will definitely overgrow because they are cancerous in nature. Now, how to solve this problem? This problem was solved by Kohler and Milstein. Now, these two gentlemen received the Nobel Prize in 1984 for the work of the production of monoclonal antibodies by stimulating the B cell. Now, what they did was, through their studies, they understood, and from the various other studies, they came to know that myeloma cells, they lack an enzyme called as hypoxanthine guanine phosphoribosyltransferase, or which we abbreviate as HGPRT. Now, HGPRT is an essential enzyme required for the salvage pathway of nucleotide synthesis. Right. So, since myeloma cells they don't have HGPRT, you have to provide it as a supplement in the media for it to synthesize nucleotides for the DNA. Another thing that what they knew was that aminopterin is a chemical known to inhibit the de novo pathway. Having those these two factors, what they did was, when they isolated the B cell which has the capacity to produce an antibody, they isolated those B cells from the spleen of the host organism and they mixed it with the myeloma cells. But in the culture vessel, they did not add HGPRT and they only added aminopterin. Since HGPRT is not available, therefore myeloma cells cannot grow, and since there is aminopterin is there, it will definitely going to hinder the growth of the B cell. Moreover, B cells, since they are short-lived, there is no problem in elucidating them out of the culture vessel. The only growth that could be seen would be of hybrid cell, because the B cell contains HGPRT, and on it being getting hybrided with the myeloma cells, the problem of salvage pathway for the myeloma cells is being solved in the hybrid. Now, such an hybrid will only, since it was a single type of a B cell was there, it will produce a particular kind of an antibody, and if we separate this particular antibody, this antibody will definitely understand only a single type of an epitope over an antigen, and hence this antibody will be known as a monoclonal antibody. Now, what is the disadvantage of using monoclonal antibody is that it is not good for the reaction which requires agglutination. Now, what is agglutination and what is precipitation? We'll look into them in the next series of the video. But when you are talking about monoclonal antibodies, they are good for the purification process, but for the reactions like agglutinations, they are not good, as they cannot have much amount of cross linking. Now, whenever we are doing any assay based upon antigen and antibody interaction, we need to keep in mind the concentration factor of the addition of antigen and antibodies. If either the antigen or antibody is there in the reaction mixture in excess, it will not cause proper cross linking that is needed for either agglutination or precipitation. This effect is known as pro or post zone effect. If you can see in the graph, you will see that if the antibody is in excess, then only few, as compared to the concentration of antigen, only few antibodies have the ability, or they have the chances basically to bind to the antigen, and most of the antibodies remain in unbounded form, which will not show you any agglutination or precipitation in the reaction mixture, although it is there, but it is not visible. In the same way, if the antigen is more as compared to antibody, then all the sites will be immediately saturated, and then there will be less cross linking, which will not allow much precipitation or agglutination. And precipitation and agglutination will only be seen in the region where there is an equimolar amount of antigen and antibody is present, and we call that particular concentration or that particular zone as zone of equivalence. So in the zone of equivalence or in the equimolar concentration, you will always get a proper agglutination or precipitation reaction. So you need to keep in mind this important phenomena of the concentration limitedness of the antigen antibody reaction. So this video talks about a general understanding of what is an antigen and antibody interaction is all about, how we generate the different types of antibodies, and and what are the things that we need to keep in mind before proceeding towards the diagnosis techniques. In the next part of of my lecture, we will be talking about the different types of assays or techniques available for the diagnosis of disease, which are completely based upon antigen and antibody interaction. Thank you for listening to me, and if you have any questions, please feel free to call or message me over the details of the contact that you can see over the screen, and you can definitely uh, keep a watch on what we are doing through the links provided below, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you once again. Have a great time ahead.